All right. Welcome to the Paranormal Network Friday Paranormal Live Chat. I am a paranormal investigator and paranormal network manager, Jason Hewlett here. We're trying something a bit different, beaming from not only to Facebook, our Facebook page, but also to our YouTube channel. Hopefully, people are here checking it all out. The subject this week that we are trying for is types of hauntings, because there's more than one type of haunting actually going on. Usually there's two primary types of hauntings, and then there are a few other types of hauntings that can be controversial in terms of people believing them or not. We got some people watching, someone liking. If you want, leave a comment. I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as possible and intelligently too. I'm really surprised this is all working. Technology and I don't usually get along all that well. Bit about me before we get into it. I've been a paranormal investigator for almost 20 years. I'm the author of two books under the I Want to Believe banner. One of them, One Man's Journey into the Paranormal. Another one, An Investigator's Archive, that just hit. And I co-host Peter Wren. Hello, Peter. He is the co-author of the two books. He's also the lead investigator on the Paranormal Network's We Want to Believe, and my co-host on Hunting the Haunted as well. And I stole a lot of this information from him. There you go, Peter. I gave you credit for it. It's not thievery then. Yeah, and I've been running the Paranormal Network now since about May. I've been investigating ghosts, like I said, for almost 20 years, and the co-founder of Canadian Paranormal Foundation, along with Peter. So, getting to the gist of this conversation, types of hauntings. There are two primary types of hauntings, and Pete, I know you're there, so feel free to add commentary if you want. The first one is being a residual haunting, also known as stone tape theory. And this is speculation that ghosts and hauntings are like a tape recording, basically on the Earth's electromagnetic field, or that a mental impression from an emotional or traumatic event has been sort of recorded onto the environment. So there's the two different sides of it. There's the scientific side with the, electromagnetic field. And then there's sort of the more spiritual side of the emotions being imprinted on a place, rocks, other items. What is this? You're probably wondering. Well, this is kind of the kind you hear about where people see things happening kind of at the same time under the same conditions. So it's 2:00 in the morning, it's raining, and you see the ghost of a woman wandering down a hallway. And it's only at 2:00 in the morning, and it's only when it's raining or a thunderstorm going on. That's one of them. There's a location that we've investigated, a former residential school, where pretty much every time we're there at the same time, you hear footsteps on a fire escape walking down the fire escape. That's one example. Splashing in a pool, train whistles blowing when there's no train, that kind of thing. So it's the same event replaying itself over and over and over again, like a recording. That's one. Another one is the traditional haunting, and it's kind of the one traditional, classic, intelligent haunting. And this is when a spirit or apparition is attempting to communicate and interact with the living. Hello, Lloyd. Welcome. Nice to have you here. And this is kind of the classic one that you see on movies like The Conjuring, although that goes into a different element there. I'm not even going to get into that right now because I'm giving away too much information for later. This is the classic kind of haunting that people hear about. These are doors opening or closing, lights kind of turning on and off on their own. Hello, Audrey. You're new. Welcome. And I'm glad you love the paranormal. We all love it here too. Objects being taken and found later in a different spot, voices communicating with you or joining in on whole conversations, the cold spots that everyone talks about, feeling touched, having your hair pulled, clothing pulled. My friend Peter is actually almost pulled to the floor once at a location, having objects move about on their own. That is an intelligent haunting, and it's the idea that there is some kind of entity there trying to communicate with you. Hey, Debbie, welcome. Communicate with you, get your attention. As a paranormal investigator, this is kind of the common one I know that I've been called to, and Peter as well. Um, but to keep in mind, if you're trying to communicate back with the spirit and it's not communicating back with you and it's only happening at certain times or in certain places, you may actually be dealing with a residual haunting. It can be hard to tell initially. Um, so what is this? Why do these intelligent hauntings occur even? Well, there's a bunch of different theories with that. Perhaps there's a spirit or entity that's attached to a particular person or object. This is where you can get into the whole idea of haunted objects. Maybe the spirit is confused and not aware that they have died. There's a theater here where I live where there's a spirit named Albert that is rumored to haunt it. And there could be the idea that he's doesn't even know he's dead at this point, hanging out there. There's also the idea, and this is a big one that you hear in Hollywood movies, that the spirit has unfinished business they need to complete before they move on. A really good movie, actually, that shows that is The Changeling, 1980 movie with George C. Scott. Oh, and what's Peter saying here? Peter's comment: it could be an issue that we can't communicate within their frequency, right, Peter? Which we could then be getting into the whole residual haunting aspect of that, perhaps. Audrey, has a spirit ever followed you home? And if so, what would you do? I'm not 100% sure if a spirit has followed me home or not. When we investigate, there's this thing called a paranormal hangover. And that's when you're kind of worn out from the investigation. Could be because you've been up late. There's some people that think that maybe a spirit's interacting with you. There have been people that say that they've had experiences go on in the house after they've been to an investigation. Um, what would you do? Sometimes they just move on their own. I find, and I'm sure Peter could back me up on this, that if you just kind of firmly say you are not welcome here and please leave, that can actually get the whole thing done with. And going back to Peter's comment earlier with trying to figure out if it's a residual haunting or an intelligent haunting, as he says here, we experiment to find out exactly what's going on. Okay, so those are the two most common sorts of hauntings that we deal with. There are other ones. Um, Pat, hello. What is your view concerning orbs? Well, Pat, I'm pretty sure, and Peter can back me up here, and any serious investigator, orbs are dust. That's it. It's dust particles generally showing up in the environment. I've never seen any actual orbs or ball lightning, I guess, if you really wanted to get to it that way. Another type of haunting, poltergeist, which is the German word for noisy ghost. If you've seen the movie Poltergeist, it's a pretty good example of it. And it's a type of ghost which rarely has any kind of physical form, but it's responsible for physical disturbances, bangings, objects being moved about, destroyed, chairs sort of standing up on their own, doors being slammed, Lego being tossed about. The Enfield poltergeist case out of the UK is a prime example of that. Which of course was the subject of the second Conjuring movie, but that's a whole other different conversation. There have been cases of physical attacks, scratches, smelling things, scents, odors, faucets turning on and off, electronics turning on and off. The big question here, hey, your opinion of Scream from Miguel Alejandro Año Reviews. The original Scream, well, this isn't really a movie review show, Miguel, but I really like it, actually. Different theories. Well, opinions can differ on what a poltergeist is. Generally, it's thought to be that it's caused by someone's subconscious mind and is centered around an individual. And they're their psychokinetic energy being unleashed. And it's quite common in households where there are prepubescent girls or some kind of trauma that has been going on. And it's just all that tension and frustration being released. The Bell Witch haunting wasn't so much a ghost. It's that it said, oh, and here's Peter's comment on what orbs could be, for the record, that it actually was the girl at the center of the hauntings energy being unleashed and not that of like a witch, actual witch. Audrey, have you ever been attacked? or seen anything demonic. For the demonic part, no, and we're actually going to get to the whole idea behind demonic or negative hauntings coming up. I haven't so much as been attacked. I've been sworn at once or twice or three times. Ghosts don't like me that way. And I was actually in the tunnels of a local sanitarium during an investigation, and I was moving through a doorway. There's no airflow down in the tunnels, so the door just opened and closed easily. I kind of stopped. I was with my partner at the time. We were deciding whether we were going to go back out by going up to the surface or back through the tunnels. We decided to go through the tunnels. All right, Peter, we'll see you later, brother. Going through the tunnels. So we decided to go back through the tunnel. So I turned around and I opened the door and tried to go back through. And I got the door about halfway open before something on that door pulled back on it with enough force to pull me into that doorway. I am 6'1". At the time, I weighed about 200 pounds and just boom, into the door. That's the closest I've been to being attacked, Audrey, but thank you for asking. So now, inhuman hauntings. Now, inhuman spirits are entities that have never lived as a human being, and they've been around throughout history and in every culture. Demons are the primary candidates in inhuman hauntings, or as we like to call them, negative hauntings. But depending on your beliefs, they can also be classified as angels, gnomes, fairies, jinn, or genies. They're basically anything that wasn't a person first. So generally, a haunting is assumed to be... Oh, B.E. Taylor, glad you're finding this interesting. Thank you. So haunting is something that's believed to have been a person who has passed away, died, and they're hanging around trying to interact with you or just playing over, like we said before. It's like a tape recording. An inhuman haunting or a negative haunting is believed to be something that's never been alive. So what is this? There's elemental aspect of it, which much of the information of elementals come from folklore. They're legends or a cultural belief. Some believe that elementals have the ability to manipulate the environment or patterns around us or in a localized area. They have a reputation for being extremely troublesome and difficult to remove and can even be fatal. Due to the rarity of the hauntings, the opinions of paranormal investigators differ on this one. What's this? Jackie, never heard of anything, but have you felt when there is a presence close by? Actually, Jackie, yes, I have. I was actually at a place where my father, who had passed away, was hanging out at the time, and I could have sworn that he kind of walked up behind me and was there with me. I'm glad you're finding this interesting. Demonic hauntings are actually the rarest, and unfortunately, and they are what most people think hauntings are, especially if you come from a religious background. I got to speak that I don't actually. I approach this from as scientific a background as possible. Peter is actually consulting investigator for an exorcist out of Washington State, and he's only, out of all of his years of doing this 10 years, come across one case where he could believe them to actually be. Most paranormal investigators do not encounter demonic hauntings. It's such a rare thing, and it's open to great debate and deals a lot more, I think, with your religious or spiritual perspective on that one. B. Taylor, you said you've dealt with more of the demonic than ghosts. If you could share some in the comments, I'll put it up here for people to read and comment on. But basically, when it comes to demonic hauntings, they can be associated with feelings of anger, regret, stress, jealousy, bitterness, anything negative. Hence, as an investigator, we tend to refer to them more as like a negative haunting. And the belief, though, is that these demons feed off of that energy and try to create more of it to thrive. And of course, this can lead to breaking down a person and wanting to possess them, if that's what your belief system is. Then we're coming up kind of to the last one here, which is portal hauntings. And no one actually knows for sure if these portals actually exist. However, it is theorized that portals do exist between the physical world and the spiritual world. And this is what allows spirits to kind of cross over from one area to the next. And it's been speculated that hauntings and other paranormal activities increase near these portals or doorways. What is a portal, you may ask? It could be a mirror. A lot of people believe mirrors. It could be where been a near-death experience, because quite often when someone has had a near-death experience or flatlined, they believe they see, this tunnel of light, and the idea is that we're going through this tunnel of light to the other side, be it heaven or a different dimension or whatever you want to call it. And there's a thought process that spirits can also pass back through that doorway to our world and therefore interact with us. Water is actually believed to be a conduit for spirits to pass through as well. So you typically have heard of hauntings happening or paranormal activity happening near bodies of water, rivers, lakes, etc. Trains are actually thought to be a mode for which spirits can pass along as well. So that's kind of the gist of what I wanted to get in here and talk about. I'd love to know what people think about. Have you actually experienced a residual haunting or an intelligent haunting? Poltergeist activity, negative entity, portal? Let me know. Let's have a little bit of a conversation here if we can. B. Taylor. The demonic usually has a horrible stench, scratches, and physical attacks. Yes, that's been associated with it. It's supposed to be almost like a sulfuric smell that comes with them, or like even the smell of death. There's been scratches, physical attacks, exactly, which also tie into the whole poltergeist activity kind of thing. So that's definitely it there. Jackie, another question. Do you think our loved ones can come back to watch over us? Yeah, I do. Like I said, I had experiences where I felt my father being around. Prime example, he built the house I grew up in, and I ended up living there after he had passed away and my mother had moved out. Hanging with a friend of mine one night, we were actually talking about the paranormal and whether we thought it was real or not. If I thought the house was haunted, and I said, yeah, had incidents where I thought that my dad's been around after he had passed away. And he's like, well, what kind of proof could you show me? And at that point, all the lights in the house went out. Now, and there's street lights were on, lights in all the other houses on the block were still on. The lights in my house went out. And so I just sort of said, not now, Dad. And all the lights in the house came back on. Dad liked to play jokes on people. And I think that was him hanging around, letting me know that he was still there. So, Eric, sorry I missed your comment, man. My BFS passed away from cancer recently. He paid me a visit for 3 days. 5 a.m. in the morning, getting coffee ready. I closed my cabinet. After I prepared it, I went to my bedroom for a second and come back to the kitchen. The kitchen cabinet is wide open. I believe it is. Well, yeah, I agree. That could have been your friend Eric coming back to let you know that they're still around. I think that's really interesting. It can be startling when that happens. How did it make you feel when he was there? Paul Baumgartner. We have things moved from where we left them, or items go missing for a while and then appear in a place where you can't miss it. That's classic intelligent haunting behavior there, Pat. How did you find it to have that go on and to interact with that? Did you find it frightening? I find it startling at first, and then you kind of get used to it. And I think, as someone who's been an investigator, and I've said this to people as well who've had called, myself and my colleagues into their home. If it's not startling you and it's not scaring you and it's not bothering you and it's not trying to hurt you, sometimes you can coexist. You just kind of have to set the parameters of the behavior, what you're willing to accept from the spirit and what you're willing to have them do while they're there. B.E. Taylor. As a teenager, I had lights go on and off, and I've had things move around the house and saw dark hooded figures on my bed. This went on for 2 years. What did you do about this? How did you sort of approach it, B? I'd be really curious. Because that can be very, very upsetting, especially the dark hooded figures, which people have reported seeing dark, shadowy shapes and can think that it can be, a negative entity or a demonic entity around the bed. Did this happen while you were sleeping as well, or while you were awake? I'd be interested in hearing that too. Because there's a whole other different theory or perspective what it could be if you were sleeping, or sleep paralysis, etc. Which I, for the record, I'm not willing to count every experience like that as sleep paralysis. I think sometimes it's very much a legitimate haunting. Both, okay, interesting. But if you're wide awake and you're wide awake, it can be startling, and it could be that there is something they're trying to communicate with you or even scare you. All right, folks. Well, that was kind of my little bit. I'm just going to make sure I didn't miss anything there. I'm really glad that Peter joined me for a bit of this. I'm going to be doing another live stream in about 2 weeks. Peter is going to join me along with a friend of ours who's a psychic, and we're going to be talking about the paranormal and Halloween and are they related, etc., etc. Oh, Eric, I was very happy, but also very emotional and in tears. Yeah, it can be. It's an emotional thing. It kind of a lot of people who don't believe like to write off. Is it something that happened to them that it's just they're making it up or they aren't actually experiencing anything. It's just something that's going on in their head. But it's real. It's what we call a personal experience. It's real. It's happening. Sure, you don't have anything that you can take and show as evidence, but it was there. And I find those things very comforting. It can be very emotional. When I've had the experience with my dad, it was awesome. Because he's still around, and it kind of gives us hope as people that when it's our turn to go, that we can still interact with our loved ones as well, and that death isn't truly the end. B. Taylor, they left after I got closer to God, and you know what? Again, spiritual belief can be powerful. When you have something happen that you think is negative, or even if it's like a haunting that's making you uncomfortable, invoking the name of Christ can be enough to drive it out and make it never come back. I said I'm not an overly religious person myself, but I think it's very powerful. And I'm finding it's wherever your belief system lies is the best way to deal with the paranormal. If it's something that's bothering you or can guide you. Jackie, my mom used to think that my grandfather used to visit me, and that was why I could feel him near me. It was probably your grandfather coming back. I would not doubt that for one moment. And I think it's really cool that our deceased loved ones can come back and hang out with us. I sometimes wish that it was more common, that I'd had more experiences like that. But when we can go into someone's home or place of business and kind of bring them that sense of closure as investigators, which is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to prove there's anything paranormal or not when we go into a place. We're just trying to gather data and as much evidence as we can, be it audio or video, and bring it back to people so that they can kind of make up their own minds. We're not there to close the book so much on anything. We're not there to debunk. We're not there to drive spirits out. No good investigator will do that at all. Jackie, you say you can't wait for our live feed. Well, we can't wait to do it. I think it'll be really interesting. There's a lot of different ideas about Halloween and the paranormal. Some people think that activity increases. Some people think it doesn't. Some people think that the portal, as we've talked about tonight, is more open between our two worlds. We're going to try to get into that as much as possible. We're going to try to get into taking questions and comments from the audience, from anyone who is tuning in to us. Does anyone have any last sort of questions or comments here before I sign off? I got to eat me some dinner, and then I got tickets to go see Halloween Kills because I'm a huge Halloween fan, and I can't wait to go see it. But I'm really enjoying communicating with all of you here. So if you got any last minute questions you'd like to ask, I will definitely do my best to address them within the next few minutes. Anyone? But big thanks, to Jackie, B, Taylor, Pat. It's been great to talk to all of you and have you here talking to me. And Peter, of course, for joining me. Eric as well. I thank you so much. And even Miguel for the opinion of Scream. Miguel, if you're still here, what do you think of the trailer for the new Scream? Are you excited to see that? I wasn't until I watched it. And then I'm kind of like, yeah, I really need to see me some more Scream movies. That's for sure. I had a past life as a film critic, so anything like that is good. Vicky, I'm glad you really enjoyed it and thought it was great. Please tune in. So yeah, 2 weeks. That's Friday, October 29th, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back with myself and Peter, plus our psychic friend, to talk about the paranormal and Halloween. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I had a blast. Enjoy your evenings. And yes, Andre, if you go watch it, enjoy the movie as well. Thanks, everybody.